In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew a Sunshine Bums wet bag. And this particular pattern is about 8.5 by 7 inches, and it has a really cute rounded shape. You can find the pattern in my Etsy shop, and I'll leave a link to that below. It also features a snap handle and an outer pocket with a magnetic closure. It's the perfect size for carrying cloth pads inside of a larger purse, but you can also use it for carrying makeup inside of your purse mess-free, and you can use it at the beach or the pool to protect your cell phone and your car keys, and you can also use it to store your wet bathing suit in after you go for a swim. Okay, let's get started. First, we're going to trace and cut the pattern pieces onto the fabric. And for the outer fabric, you want to use something pretty sturdy. Here I'm using red denim. You could also use canvas. We need to cut out 2 of the main body pieces. Make sure that you mark the snap opening on just one of those pieces. And because I'll be using a contrasting fabric for this bag, I'm just going to cut out one of the outer pocket and one handle strap. And then cut out another pocket piece and another handle strap with the contrasting fabric. Now it's time to trim all the fabric pieces, and for this pattern you want to cut right on the line because the seam allowance is built in. Then cut out 2 of the main body pattern pieces with your waterproof lining fabric. Next, you'll need some mid-weight fusible interfacing. You'll need 2 pieces, and I sometimes make these a little bit longer, like 2 by 4 inches, so that the top edge will get caught in the seam stitching and it will be more secure. You want to iron these onto the wrong side of the fabric where you have the snap closure marked. And just iron it on according to the package directions. Now take one of the backings to your snap closure and make sure that it's centered right on your snap marking and mark the 2 little prong openings. Then fold the fabric in half right on those markings and take your scissors and snip on the markings, being careful not to cut too far. Now it's time to start sewing. And you're just going to take your 2 pocket pieces and line them up with right sides touching. Using the straight stitch and leaving a 1/2 inch of seam allowance, stitch all the way across the top. And then using pinking shears, trim off the extra seam allowance to about 1/4 of an inch. Next, iron the seam allowance towards the lining, and I try not to go too far up towards the lining so that it doesn't get creases. It should look sort of wavy, like a flower petal. Then stitch the seam allowance onto the lining about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. And here's a close-up so you can see what that looks like. Flip the fabric back over so that the wrong sides are facing, and smooth out your seam and get it just where you want it to be, and then iron it into place. And really give it a good iron here because you won't be able to iron it after you put the snap on. Now apply the female snap to the right side of the main body piece and then flip the fabric over and put the backing on. You can fold the prongs inward or outward. I've seen it done both ways. Then apply the male snap to the front pocket piece. Now you're ready to connect the magnets and make sure that everything is lined up exactly how you want it to be, and then pin all the way around the edges. Now we're going to baste the layers together. So you want to use the straight stitch and put it on the longest possible setting, and then stitch all the way around the edge, leaving a 1/4 inch seam. And now we're ready to sew on the zipper. Take the front of the bag that you just basted together and lay it right side up on a flat surface, and then place the zipper along the top edge. You want the top side of the zipper to be facing down, and you want the little zipper handle to be on the left-hand side. Then take one piece of the waterproof lining fabric and place it on top of those with the right side facing down. And with the zipper sandwiched in between, you want to pin all along the top, really making sure that all of the edges are even with each other. And then using the zipper foot attachment, stitch all of those layers together. Now we're going to repeat the same exact thing on the other side of the zipper. So you just need to flip the fabric over so that the other side of the zipper is exposed. Place the back side of the purse on a flat surface right side up and line up the zipper edge with that piece of fabric. Grab your other piece of waterproof lining fabric and place it face down. And once again, line everything up evenly and then pin it together. And stitch those layers together using the zipper foot attachment. You can see how it's really starting to come together. The next step is to sew the fabric securely onto the zipper so that it doesn't get caught when you're trying to zip it. So you want to switch back to the straight stitch and the walking foot attachment, or else a regular standard foot. And then you're just going to do one side at a time. So first, pull the front of the bag and its lining fabric to one side away from the zipper. And you need to pull it tight and then stitch it about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam that's right next to the zipper. Then flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Here's a close-up of what that should look like. At this point, we need to create the handle strap. Take your 2 pieces of fabric and place them right sides together. Stitch all the way around the perimeter, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance and leaving just one of the small ends open so that you can turn it. Now clip your corners and just be careful not to cut into your line of stitching, and then also take about 1/8 of an inch off of the top. Then take your turning tool and you're going to turn the handle right side out. So you want to put it all the way in and hook it onto the end of the handle, and then start to pull it through. And sometimes this takes a little patience, especially with thicker denim type fabrics. But once you get the end of the handle through the opening, you can usually just pull it through really easily after that. And at this point, it's not going to look very pretty, but we're going to iron it next, so that's okay. Here I'm using the Clover number 18 3/4 inch loop pressing bar. And it's the perfect size for this handle. You just want to stick it all the way in to make sure that the end is pushed out all the way. And then I just use my little seam ripper tool to pull the corners out if they're stuck. I don't pull them out quite all the way. I like the corners to have a little bit of a rounded look. Here's a close-up, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I didn't get it perfect this time, but if you pull the corners out too far, it looks kind of wonky. Now put the turning bar inside of the handle strap again and iron both sides, and then take it out and iron both sides again. To finish the handle strap, top stitch 1/8 of an inch around the entire edge. Now we're going to get the bag ready to stitch everything together. So take your handle strap and place it on the left edge of the bag with the contrasting fabric facing down, and you want to pin it at a tiny bit of an angle so that the seam is flush with the seam of the bag. You don't want it to go straight across. And then pin the other end somewhere towards the middle of the bag so that it doesn't get caught in the seam when you're sewing. Unzip the zipper about 2/3 of the way open. Now flip the fabric over so that the two pieces of outer fabric are touching and the two pieces of waterproof fabric are touching. And this is really important to get right. You need to make sure that the zipper is pushed towards the waterproof lining fabric and the seam allowance is pushed over towards the outer bag fabric. And then pin it in place just like that and put another pin on each side of it to make sure that everything stays in place. Flip the bag over and do the same thing on the opposite side, except on the side where the zipper is open, you're going to need to be careful and make sure that the zipper tail ends are even with each other. Then finish pinning all the way around the edge of the bag and make sure that everything is lined up really straight and smooth. And we're going to leave the opening on the bottom side of the waterproof lining fabric. Okay, so now we're ready to sew the bag together. Leave about a 6-inch opening and make sure that you backstitch at the openings. And you're going to sew a 1/2-inch seam here. And when you get to the zippers, just be careful to sew really slowly over the top of that because it's a lot of thickness and that will prevent your needle from breaking. And because this is a rounded pouch, as you get closer to the zipper, you're going to need to sort of pull the two sides of the bag apart from each other so that you don't get any creases in the fabric. And then the last thing that I do here is to double stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, just for a few inches where the handle strap is to make it extra secure. Now snip both of the zipper ends off so that they're flush with the seam allowance. And with pinking shears, trim the seam allowance on all of the curved parts of the bag to about 1/4 of an inch, except not on the bag opening. We want to leave that just how it is. Now for the fun part, we get to turn the bag right side out and you want to unpin the handle strap. And there's a thing that you can do with the zipper. You want to open it all the way and sort of push it as far as it will go into the end and then pull out. And that really gives you a good edge to the bag. Next, we need to iron the bag, and I like to use a clover turning tool for that. I reach in through the opening and smooth out the edges of the bag and then iron it in place. And I just go all around the edges of the bag until the whole thing has a really nice shape. Next, pin the bag opening shut, and then we're gonna sew it together. You want to stitch really close to the edge here, about 1/8 of an inch away, and I always make knots at the beginning of the end, and I do that by setting the stitch length to almost nothing and then taking about 4 or 5 stitches that way. Then trim the threads and we're ready to tuck the lining inside of the bag. I like to use the iron one last time to iron just along the top edge of the zipper on both sides of the bag. The last step is to place the snaps, and I'm using an industrial cam snap press here, but you can also use the handheld kind. It works just as well. You want to place the female snap at the base of the strap. And the snap needs to be facing the contrasting fabric or the front of the bag. And then to figure out where to place the male snap, you want to fold the handle strap over and put it exactly where you want it to be. And I like for the end to be sticking out over the edge of the bag about 1/4 of an inch, because I think it looks better that way, but also there's a little bit more to hold on to then. And so then you want to feel with your finger where the female snap is below that, and then poke the snap through right at that spot. And then just apply the other side of the snap with the press, and now we're all finished. Thank you for watching, and I'm really wishing you all happy sewing. And if you would like to get the pattern for this bag or other fun cloth pad reusable related patterns, you can find those at my Etsy shop, and I will be leaving a link for that below. Peace, everyone. Bye.